Order. Ben Obsujecti to move the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. It is a pleasure to serve under your chairship. This debate has been a long time coming, such as the Kafkaesque procedure for selecting debates. This application was the 8th time of asking, having first requested a debate on this subject on the 1st of September last year, over 4 months ago. Since then, the Ajax programme has gone from on track to throwing a track, and the outlook of the future of the programme, our armoured capability, the future of armoured infantry as a concept, and indeed the current deployability of 3 UK division are now all very much under the microscope. In this debate, I'm not seeking to apportion blame, point fingers at individuals, or orchestrate a witch hunt. It is clear that the Ajax programme has been failing for a number of years, and though I will go on to question some of the specific recent decision-making regarding the programme, accountability sits with successive ministers. The slow progress of delivery would appear to be an issue between the Army, the Department and General Dynamics. We can skip over the potted history of the Ajax programme. I know others will cover that. But to paraphrase Rogers and Hammerstein, how do you solve a problem like Ajax? Though based on an existing General Dynamics platform, the Army made so many additions and revisions to the existing capability, it is now considered to be bespoke technology. A staggering 1,200 capability requirements for each of the 6 vehicle types under the Ajax umbrella. The March 2022 National Audit Office report into the Ajax programme details that neither the Department nor General Dynamics fully understood some component specifications or how they would be integrated onto the Ajax vehicle, leading to consequential changes to the overall design, disputes between the MOD and General Dynamics, and inevitably, programme delays. Both the MOD and General Dynamics have been criticised for underestimating the scale of the work, the technical challenge and the sequencing of the work. General Dynamics blame the MOD for not having fully defined acceptance criteria. The MOD blamed General Dynamics' safety documentation. The contingency within the programme was quickly used up and the programme was suddenly 4 years behind schedule. Issues of noise and vibration were recognised in mid-2020, with a stop notice issued in June 2021. All dynamic movement and transition activity was halted whilst the programme underwent a significant reset. The Army resumed training on Ajax in 2023 and paused again in November 2025. The programme's issues from 2020 to 2021 are well documented. Failure to establish effective governance, complex assurance arrangements, high turnover of senior staff, ineffective programme board, weak project controls. The list goes on. The most stark, however, was this: an overemphasis on achieving its IOC date, which meant that it prioritised time and cost over capability. As a result, it pressed ahead with the programme without resolving performance issues. Given what we know now, and the issues encountered less than 3 weeks after IOC was declared, I would like to hear an assessment from the Minister as to whether he believes this is still an issue today. Initial operating capability for the Ajax programme was declared on the 5th of November 2025 by the Government, and I stress by the Government because there were several stages to that process that haven't been made public until last month. The Minister for Defence Readiness and Industry confirmed to me that all criteria for Ajax initial operating capability were met on the 23rd of July 2025, and following a period of review, IOC was declared by the Army on the 15th of September 2025. We only know this because it was written on a cake in a General Dynamics promotional video of the Minister's visit to Merthyr Tydfil. Additionally, he confirmed that before declaring initial operating capability, I received written assurances from the Chief of the General Staff and the Acting NAD that the vehicle was safe to operate. Within the letter note Ajax, the vehicle was described as demonstrably safe to operate, also adding, prior to Ajax initial operating capability being announced, I sought assurances in writing from the Chief of the Defence Staff and the National Armaments Director that the system was safe to operate, which I received.
I thank my honourable friend for bringing this important debate forward and for giving way. Does he agree with me that I think it's important for the Minister to set out that in 2022 myself and other colleagues on the Defence Select Committee went to Merthyr Tydfil, did a review and clearly stated that IOC was no way near deliverable in the timeframes that have been proposed? Do you think it's worth that the Minister sets out what checks against the Defence Select Committee report were done when looking at IOC?
I thank my honourable friend for his contribution. I think that's an excellent point. It's not something that I was going to go on to cover in my debate, so I think that is definitely worth adding to the record for the Minister to provide in his response. The interim National Armaments Director, new National Armaments Director, Chief of the General Staff and the Chief of the Defence Staff represent our most senior leaders within Defence. It is hard to believe that they all would have signed off on a vehicle platform that was inherently unsafe or where it was a sketchy 50-50 decision. So how do we reach a point where 4-star senior officers and equivalents had the confidence to sign off on the vehicle's initial operating capability, then received ministerial approval, and only weeks later blowing up in everybody's face like a Wile E. Coyote roadrunner trap? The March 2022 National Audit Office report states that the Department believes that the contract also incentivised GDLS UK to prioritise production milestones over the quality and performance of the capability, and The contract incentivised GDLS UK to achieve production milestones, resulting in its continuing to manufacture vehicles whilst technical issues remain unsolved. Can the Minister give any clarity on whether this is still the case today, given General Dynamics signed off achieving all of the criteria required to meet initial operating capability, only for the entire programme to collapse less than 4 months later? Initial operating capability was also signed off by the Army on the 15th of September before ministerial sign-off was granted on the 5th of November. Last year, the then Minister for Defence Procurement and Industry stated that the Armoured Cavalry programme is projecting the delivery of over 180 operationally deployable vehicles by the end of 2025. Despite the various travails of the Ajax programme, production has continued throughout the training pause. As a result, we know that the Army has received just under a third of all Ajax platforms across all variants. It should be noted that the 2022 National Audit Office report highlighted that the compressed programme schedule flagged that there would now be no longer time to validate the design of capability drops 3 and 4 before manufacture. Given we are now in capability drop 3, can the Minister confirm whether designs were validated before these vehicles were assembled and delivered last year? The Minister also confirmed that it is anticipated that a further 110 platforms will be delivered in 2026, with the remaining 297 platforms delivered by 2028. With 180 Ajax platforms delivered, a similar number still to be accepted by the Army, and all 589 hulls having now been completed in Spain, on current timelines, the complete production run will have been completed by mid-2027. I believe that includes bringing all vehicles up to capability drop 4 standard. Assuming that any resolution to the current training pause doesn't involve the mother of all factory recalls, there could potentially be an idle factory in Wales. What plans are there for the Merthyr Tydfil factory beyond the middle of next year? With only 18 months' work left to complete, can he assure General Dynamics employees in Wales that they will have a job once Ajax production is complete? And can he assure those employees that there will be no redundancies, given we have no plans to purchase any more vehicles and export plans are yet to materialise? Whilst I appreciate UK defence and security exports sits within the Department for Business and Trade, could the Minister confirm what progress UK DSE has made regarding any potential export sales? One of the main reasons we're here debating this today, and the reason for such media interest, has been because of the social media content that has emerged from the factory and from Army personnel regarding the workmanship of the vehicles. To that end, I'd like to recognise the efforts of Alfie Usher, aka Philly Boots, who has been instrumental in putting heat and light on this issue on behalf of service personnel. For obvious reasons, I'm no trade unionist, but he has been the unofficial Secretary-General of the unofficial Armed Forces Union for some time. I know the Armed Forces Minister has liaised with him on issues previously, and only partially in jest, perhaps the government should reconsider his application to be the Armed Forces Commissioner. I know the government is struggling to fill the role, and Alfie's application got binned back in August. He's been doing the job unpaid since then anyway. For those of you who don't follow his account, and if you're a politician with an interest in defence, you really should, between the exposés and topical memes, Alfie's been the bête noire of General Dynamics and the Army, operating as chief whistleblower and ensuring that the voice of those on the ground can be heard. There have been multiple examples of concerns shared by him via social media on behalf of service personnel tasked with prepping newly delivered vehicles. A variety of issues have been highlighted, and I would ask the Minister, if he hasn't done so already, to include Alfie within the scope of the ministerial-led review to ensure full transparency and the inclusion of service personnel. It is they who are the end user of this vehicle, and too often do we ask our personnel to put up and shut up. In an organisation that dines out on moral courage and pretends it values 360-degree feedback, we should make sure that we listen to our soldiers, irrespective of how refreshingly blunt their views might be. The evidence shown on Philly Boots has put heat and light on the production and assembly issues upon which blame has been placed. During the first pause in 2021, the MOD and General Dynamics didn't agree on whether the levels of noise and vibration in Ajax vehicles breached contractual requirements. Given the same noise and vibration issues potentially remain unresolved 6 years later, could the Minister clarify what does constitute a contractual breach? Through 2020 to 2021, General Dynamics undertook a supposedly in-depth review of the Ajax programme to confirm the root cause of noise and vibration issues, identify solutions and then validate them through extensive testing. They identified that noise and vibration issues were caused by the track, suspension and running gear, the engine and its mounting in the vehicle, quality issues including bolting, cable routing and welding, and performance and integration of crew headsets. The vehicles were thoroughly assessed using a noise and vibration calculator, whatever that is, to determine the safe operating envelopes for the platform across different speeds and terrains. This noise and vibration calculator, provided by General Dynamics, didn't measure noise and vibration, which DSTL raised concerns about. It estimated the maximum safe exposure time on Ajax vehicles for given conditions based on measurements from early trials. In August 2020, the first noise-induced hearing loss symptoms were reported by soldiers. In September 2020, DSTL discovered an error in General Dynamics measurements, which meant vehicle crews may have been overexposed to noise and vibration. The Minister for Defence Readiness and Industry has told me that whole body and hand arm vibration levels were well understood and effective mitigations were in place. Except they can't have been effective, or else why would personnel still today be suffering from noise and vibration-related sickness? Could the Minister confirm that any analysis of the root cause of the current noise and vibration sickness does not use the General Dynamics noise and vibration calculator and instead seeks to use a metric which does not raise concerns with DSTL? The measures implemented by General Dynamics included the implementation of an effective hearing protection and combined communication system, an improvement to the overall Ajax build quality, a review and amendment of build tolerances for key crew interfaces, changes to seat structures to provide greater vibration attenuation, which sounds very much like new seat cushions, and improvements to track tensioning procedures to ensure correct track tension, which reduces vibration. On the last point regarding track tension, I am aware that composite rubber tracks are now mature enough to be viable for a vehicle the weight of Ajax. Whilst there are still issues regarding track replacement, given the whole track has to be replaced rather than a single track link, I note that the General Dynamics Ajax Blackjacks demonstrator vehicle at DSEI had this fitted. I would ask the Minister what assessment has the Department made of the feasibility of switching to composite rubber tracks as a potential solution going forward. The 2022 National Audit Office report outlined that there were 27 limitations of use on Ajax vehicles in September 2021, 22 safety-related and 11 were critical to achieving IOC. Can the Minister give this House assurances that those 11 limitations were resolved prior to initial operating capability being declared in 2025? Could the Minister also confirm what contractual payments were made to General Dynamics upon the achieving of the criteria for initial operating capability in July 2025, or the formal declaration of initial operating capability on the 5th of November 2025? What is the total amount paid to General Dynamics as at today, and how much still remains to be paid? What delivery milestone will trigger the remaining payments? With those resolutions to the previous issues identified in mind, we know that there were 3 exercises that took place between IOC criteria being achieved on the 23rd of July and ministerial IOC declaration on 5th of November. We haven't heard of any instances of noise and vibration sickness occurring amongst vehicle crews during those 3 exercises. Could the Minister confirm that there were no noise and vibration sickness issues amongst crews during those 3 exercises? I asked the Minister for Defence Readiness and Industry what discussions his department had with General Dynamics, the Senior Responsible Officer and the British Army regarding the Ajax programme between the 23rd of July and exercise Titan Storm in late November. Instead of a response, the Minister told me, "I've directed a ministerial review that covers elements of his question. I will update the House in due course." The Minister was happy to tell me that he met with key stakeholders, including meeting with General Dynamics after the programme was paused, but much as I've tried, the Government has scrupulously avoided disclosing any information about what ministerial discussions have taken place with stakeholders between the 23rd of July and the 5th of November. On the 1st of January, I asked a name-day question for answer on the 7th of January 2026, asking how many noise and vibration injuries were sustained between the 23rd of July 2025 and exercise Titan Storm. Strangely, I haven't received a response yet, a week after it's due. It's almost as if that's a question the Government doesn't want to disclose. I therefore asked the Minister if he could clarify the answer to written question 101920 and put on the record how many noise and vibration injuries were sustained between the achievement of initial operating capability criteria by General Dynamics and the start of exercise Titan Storm. The March 2022 National Audit Office report also states that the Department knew of noise and vibration issues before soldiers reported injuries, but was not aware of the severity of potential problems. Reporting of issues identified in trials was limited and slow, meaning that safety concerns were not shared or escalated by the Army or DENS. Has that culture been addressed? Concerns were first raised about noise and vibration by the Army trials team in late 2019, but didn't appear in quarterly programme reports until March 2021. To what extent have we seen the same issue repeat itself last summer? In December 2025, the Minister for Defence Readiness and Industry confirmed to me that of the 61 vehicles of all Ajax types involved in the exercise, 23 Ajax vehicles were linked to soldiers suffering from noise or vibration injury. I'll be grateful if the Minister could confirm where those 61 affected vehicles were manufactured. Were they part of the first 100 Ajax vehicles that were manufactured and assembled in Spain, or were they later vehicles whose hulls were manufactured in Spain but were assembled at the Merthyr Tydfil facility? Can he also confirm whether the early production vehicles from capability drop 0 to 2 that were identified as not being fully compliant with requirements have now been retrofitted, and therefore what capability drop are they currently equipped to? The Minister also confirmed that on the 22nd of November, during a routine training exercise, around 30 soldiers operating Ajax reported being affected by noise and vibration exposure. For 30 soldiers to be affected by the same noise and vibration sickness with identical symptoms as a result of a known issue that was supposedly resolved by 2023 is simply unacceptable. It is therefore incredibly important that we are able to understand whether there were any instances during the 3 exercises prior to Titan Storm, or indeed identify whether there have been any instances of General Dynamics employees affected by noise and vibration exposure during the same period, either prior to or after the 23rd of July IOC criteria achievement milestone. In November, I asked the Minister for Defence Readiness and Industry how many compensation claims relating to noise and vibration symptoms incurred during the use of Ajax variants has been made since the start of the Armoured Cavalry programme. The Minister informed me that it will take time to collate and review the information needed to answer the question, and he would write to me. It is now mid-January, and so I would appreciate if the Minister could provide that information in his response. It shouldn't take 2 months to work out how many compensation claims have been made relating to Ajax. And if I was the Minister, I would have a close eye on the running tally, particularly in preparation for this debate. On the 8th of December, the Minister of Defence Readiness and Industry confirmed that we are currently undertaking reviews into the medical injuries sustained by Ajax crews, and more details on the findings will be published in due course. Could he confirm whether either the ministerial-led review he has commissioned or the report from the Defence Accident Investigation Board will contain the details of these findings? In that review, will he confirm how many service personnel are undergoing treatment or have been diagnosed with hearing loss following audiometry protocols after operating within an Ajax variant? With regards to when the vehicles will be able to recommence training, any decisions on the pause are to be made by ministers after the investigations by the Defence Accident Investigation Board has concluded. That would suggest that the pause will be lifted after the investigation, but before the conclusion of the ministerial-led review. Could the Minister clarify the timeline for both the investigation, which he previously stated would take at least 2 weeks and so should be approaching its completion, and the ministerial-led review, for which I believe we're yet to see the terms of reference, which were due before Christmas? And I appreciate it will still be autumn until the DIP is published in March. Will the pause on use of Ajax be lifted before the conclusion of his review, given the noise and vibration issues may not have been identified, let alone resolved? This debate is titled as the future of the Ajax programme, and whilst the near future revolves around the resolution of the immediate issues that followed Exercise Titan Storm, beyond that, this programme will need to achieve full operating capability, but crucially, it will be the tip of the spear in our armoured doctrine. So a good start would to be having an armoured doctrine that's coherent. In 2014, we ordered 589 vehicles out of an optional 1,328, below the Army's required fleet size at the time of 686. Whilst this wasn't necessarily a defining error at the time, subsequent decisions, even as recently as last summer, have compounded the issue and bring us to a situation where our armoured fleet is now completely unbalanced. Increasingly so, given the evolution of modern conflict since the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the ubiquity of drones at all levels, and the current global arms race. When Ajax was commissioned, we were still undertaking combat operations in Afghanistan. Since then, we've had multiple defence reviews, have changed our focus to the Indo-Pacific and now to the High North, and now we're talking about putting troops in Eastern Europe as a deterrent to a belligerent Russia. The irony of which is that we still have much of the same armour designed to do that job the first time round. The original plan was for Ajax, alongside Boxer and Challenger 3, to provide the backbone of the Army's armoured capability within Integrated Force 2030. March 2021's Defence in a Competitive Age outlined how the Army would use Ajax in its 2 close combat armoured brigade combat teams and as part of its Deep Recce Strike Brigade combat team, formations which are now putatively in place. We cannot discuss the future of the Ajax programme without discussing how the Army plans to use Ajax within those brigade combat teams. As somebody with a background in armoured infantry and formerly held an admittedly niche specialisation in anti-tanks, I have a more than keen interest in the future of our armoured capability. But being something of a tank spotter, there are some glaring capability gaps based on the information that ministers have provided over the last year or so. Let's start with the basics. In December 2024, the former Minister for Defence Procurement and Industry stated that, on current plans, Boxer will be delivered to 4 heavy mechanised infantry battalions and divisional enablers. But 7 months later, on the 15th of July, she stated, the Army intends to reorganise its heavy forces units in 3 divisions, such that all 4 would become armoured infantry units based on the Ajax and Boxer family of vehicles. Subsequently going on to say, the Army intends to equip the regular infantry units within 3 UK divisions with Ares in the infantry troop carrying role, 1 Mercian, 1 Royal Regiment of Fusiliers, 1 Royal Welsh and 5 rifles. So what happened between December 2024 and July 2025 that saw such a fundamental change to the future of the infantry and indeed our entire armoured capability? The number of Ares platforms to be provided hasn't changed since 2014, just 93. For reference, the current land equipment table shows we currently have 604 Warrior. Ares' role was originally protected mobility reconnaissance support and then latterly to deliver and support specialist troops. It's never once been earmarked as an infantry fighting vehicle. The then Minister for the Armed Forces stated that the Ares variant of Ajax is designed for mounted close combat and is being delivered to the field army. The decision to field Ares with infantry battalions was taken after a considerable assessment programme. I would be interested to know whether the aim of the Ares assessment programme was simply to justify the existing total of 589 vehicles or to actually highlight the capability required, because whichever question the Army asks, the answer always appears to be 589 Ajax vehicles. I asked to see the outcome of that assessment programme, but was told its disclosure would be likely to prejudice the capability, effectiveness or security of the armed forces. I suggest that given the enemy knows Ares doesn't have any armour-defeating weapons capability, the issue around prejudicing capability lies elsewhere. But let's walk that back a step. In my opinion, the Ares variant is not designed for mounted close combat. It's equipped with a remote weapon station that can mount a 50 calibre machine gun at the heaviest. As someone whose specialisation in the army was armoured infantry, I know my way around a 30mm cannon. A 50 cal cannot defeat armour. It is no substitute for 40mm APF SDS around the round its Ajax brother uses. In September, the then Minister for the Armed Forces stated that Ares will be used to deliver and support specialist troops across the battlefield. The term specialist troops is used informally and in this context refers to anti-tank javelin teams, snipers and support troops. But by November, that had changed again, with the Minister now contradictorily stating anti-tank platoons within armoured infantry units will be equipped with Boxer variants. So which is it, Ares or Boxer for javelin platoons? Will armoured infantry battalions be tracked or a mix of wheeled and tracked with the logistical implications that that then has? Will REME light aid detachments have both Ajax and Boxer repair and recovery variants? Where are we going to keep the additional vehicles? What's the training burden of mixed armoured fleets, thereby doubling driving cadres, maintenance training, vehicles commander courses? Have we even bought a recovery variant of Boxer yet? The Army's own website suggests it isn't one of the variants within the 623 ordered. This approach is incoherent and suggests the Army doesn't really know what to do with the capability it will shortly have.
He's making an excellent speech. Just on Boxer specifically, I received a PQ just before Christmas from the department saying they now won't give the IOC date for Boxer, and it is subject to the long-awaited defence investment plan. Does he agree with me that Boxer has already slipped by years and we can't let it slip any further?
I thank Honourable Friend for his contribution. I would absolutely concur that Boxer is a vital capability, even more so given the training pause that we're now encountering with Ajax, and it's vital that we get Boxer into service as quickly as possible. So I would welcome speeding up that process overall. Meanwhile, in October, the then Minister for the Armed Forces had stated that currently Ares will be fielded to training regiments, armoured cavalry units and armoured infantry units. As I've already said, we've only ordered 93. For reference, in order to reflect the establishment of an armoured infantry battalion, you would need 45 Ares to replace the capacity of the Warrior FV510, notwithstanding how many Athena variants you would need to cover the 511 command variant. Where is the capacity to have vehicles at training regiments and armoured cavalry units? There is no redundancy built into the current vehicle fleet. 93 Ares platforms equates to just 23 per battalion with no spare capacity. Not even enough to replace 3 rifles companies' worth of Warrior FV510 variant. So could the Minister explain what the future establishment of these armoured infantry battalions will be? I appreciate he won't have that to hand because I don't think the Army know yet, but will he write to me and explain how an armoured infantry battalion will be structured using Ares and Boxer? The demise of Warrior leaves a yawning capability gap that will be difficult to adequately replace without a new IFV. The Minister for the Armed Forces stated that there is no direct replacement for Warrior, and there are no plans to extend the out-of-service date for Warrior beyond 2027, and as such, an extension is not under consideration. As the Ares platform is delivered into service, tactical doctrines will be reviewed accordingly. I don't expect the Minister to answer the question or to know the ins and outs of armoured infantry doctrine, but he should raise the question with the Land Warfare Centre and with the infantry battalions who will receive Ares to ask them how the platform will be used and what capability will then be lost. By removing a main armament from the armoured infantry's firepower, you fundamentally change the way that the vehicle is fought. It changes the way the vehicles can move cross-country, effectively removes the option to move in bounding overwatch, means you can never engage enemy armour. Doctrinally, it turns the armoured infantry into mechanised infantry. Doctrinally, Ares is more akin to the Mark III Bulldog. Yet despite this, the Minister for Defence Readiness and Industry this week informed me that Ares is more suitable to be employed in the direct battle rather than in the close support role. Given the glaring absence of a main armament on Ares, I would dispute that assessment, which seems convenient rather than well thought through. Bulldog itself is due to be replaced in 2030, and I would quickly ask the Minister what progress has been made in procurement of a Patriot 6x6. Crucially, in December, the Minister for Defence Readiness and Industry stated that there are no other platforms within the Army's armoured fleet which can fulfil the armoured reconnaissance role. Ajax has been specifically designed for this purpose. With that in mind, and given the entire Ajax fleet is grounded for an unspecified length of time pending an investigation by the Defence Accident Investigation Board with support from the Army Safety Investigation Team and General Dynamics, can he state how the armoured reconnaissance capability of the British Army is currently being provided, given that statement, and therefore what is the deployability of 3 UK division without any formation or armoured reconnaissance capability, or even the deployability of an armoured battle group from within 3Div? The parlous state of the British Army's armoured capability is on the cusp of being thrust into stark contrast by the Prime Minister's announcement last week that we have committed troops to the multinational force Ukraine. Whilst any detail on that force structure is currently pure speculation, it was reported by The Times that those troop numbers wouldn't exceed 7,500. On a three-form cycle, that's circa 22,000 troops, the majority of the field army. If they're to be more than a speed bump for the vanguard of the Guards Motor Rifle Brigade, they will need capability that today they simply do not have. Challenger 3 has no timeline, with manufacturing due to commence only once the tank's performance has been proven in the demonstration phase. It isn't going to appear anytime soon. The government has no plan for the remaining 140 Challenger 2s not due to be upgraded, not even a promise that the plan will be outlined in the mythical Defence Investment Plan. And this is against the backdrop that the Defence Investment Plan itself is unfunded, with a black hole somewhere around £20 billion, give or take an Ajax programme budget. There will be cuts and there will be delays. Out-of-service dates are going to be stretched to their limits. Bulldog is already 63 years old. I'm sure it's no coincidence that it will be 67 when it reaches its out-of-service retirement date. The Chief of the General Staff wants to implement the 2040-40 land warfare concept, of which Ajax is a key part, working in tandem with Project Asgard. This is the capability that could and should provide the continuous on-land deterrent along the eastern flank defensive line, reduce our sensor to effective time, and achieve the nebulous tenfold increase in lethality by reducing the kill chain to well inside the sub-7-minute time frame that defines the current front line in Ukraine. Ajax can't be scrapped. The army need it, there is no plan B, and given it's a fixed-price contract, scrapping it will save no money anyway, despite ministers confirming that the government has sought legal advice from the government legal department. The government hasn't even considered a viable alternative option in CV90, and to start that process from scratch would take the best part of a decade before we even saw a vehicle based on current queues. Put simply, Ajax needs to be delivered, primarily because the army needs to restore its armoured reconnaissance capability, but additionally because there is a second-order effect, that of confidence. The British Army badly needs to restore faith in Ajax as a platform. For all the negative stories and negative press, the army and the government must work out how to rebuild confidence in its ailing platform. I know what it is to be given kit that you don't have confidence in, to have to use it on operations and to wonder whether it will let you down or worse, and I know the Minister can sympathise with that view. Not only must we restore faith in the platform for the soldiers expected to operate with it, we also need to restore faith in the platform for its appeal for an investor and an export position. The long-term future of Ajax depends on the ability of General Dynamics to sell it overseas. The most advanced armoured fighting vehicle in its class should be an easy sell to those nations currently in the process of rearming and upgrading. We have a history of exquisite sovereign capability that nobody else really wants. Challenger 2, Warrior, even the SA-80. Each of those has then suffered from a lack of development over its life cycle, too often a day late and a dollar short.
My friend, allow me again.
Before he concludes, I thank him for his generosity. As well as the delays to Boxer, there are now strong rumours about further delays to the upgrade of Challenger 2 to Challenger 3. As RBSL are responsible for both of these programmes, does my honourable friend agree with me that they really need to sort themselves out and get on with it?
Thank my honourable friend again, and I absolutely concur. I think with the delays to Ajax, we can no longer afford to fail to upgrade Challenger 2 to Challenger 3, and that the fact that the timeline on that has slipped to indefinite is something of a serious concern with regards to our armoured capability. A successful export programme would fuel development of the platform and allow it to improve over multiple iterations, enhancing our own capability, allowing us to benefit from the first mover advantage of adopting a common vehicle platform that can be expanded with the addition of an IFE and a mortar variant and putting us in the vanguard of armoured development in the drone age. But that cannot happen without the vehicle proving its capability, first with the soldiers, then with our allies. In a crowded field, this should be a top priority. In the Iliad, Ajax loses a competition to Odysseus and, distraught by the result and conquered by his own grief, plunges his sword into his own chest, killing himself out of shame at his own failure. The irony shouldn't be lost on any of us. Fix Ajax and fix it quickly. There is a war coming.
I remind members that they should bob if they wish to be called in this debate. The question is that this House has considered the future of the Ajax programme. Probably looking at around 3 minutes each, given the additional speakers coming forward. 3.5 minutes, something like that. And I call Gerald Jones.
Thank you, Mr Stewart. It is indeed a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship this morning. I congratulate the honourable gentleman for Huntingdon on securing this important debate. My constituency of Merthyr Tydfil and Aberdare is home to General Dynamics, and their site at Pentrabach is where Ajax vehicles are currently being assembled. And I'm here today to try to represent the views of the 700 or so workers at the site, many of whom are my constituents. Mr Stewart, in relation to the concerns that were raised in November, and as I said in the Chamber following the recent urgent question, safety is the priority and is of paramount importance. It is essential that everything possible is done to keep our brave servicemen and women safe. I am aware that General Dynamics are working closely with the Government and the MOD to try to get to the bottom of what happened in November and put right anything that needs to be done in response. Since initial concerns were identified in 2021, the company have worked closely with the Government, and robust testing has been carried out over a number of years by the company together with the MOD and the Army. General Dynamics have operated in South Wales Valleys for many years and acquired the site in Merthyr Tydfil in 2014. And since then, hundreds of my constituents and others from surrounding areas have been employed on the Ajax programme and have dedicated themselves to playing their part in building a platform that is at the forefront of our defence readiness. Just 2 months ago, the Minister for Defence Readiness and Industry was in Merthyr Tydfil to celebrate the milestone of the IOC being awarded. And I was present on that day, and the whole workforce were upbeat about the contribution that they were making to the nation's defence story. General Dynamics have been committed to the local area, and I'm aware that there are ongoing discussions around exports of the Ajax platform to other countries. This, of course, would mean sustaining jobs and creating additional jobs in my constituency and in the supply chain across South Wales and beyond.
Thank you, Chair. Would the Honourable Gentleman agree with me that many of my constituents in Leith and Swansea are actually employed in this sector, in General Dynamics and in the wider supply chain? And would my Honourable Friend agree that these are the very types of secure, well-paid jobs are exactly what we need across the South Wales region?
I thank my honourable friend for that intervention. I absolutely agree with her comment. It is indeed important we have certainty for those jobs, to sustain the jobs and increase the jobs across South Wales, because it is integral to the growth agenda of this government in communities in Wales and right across the UK. Mr Stewart, Merthyr Tydfil has a long, proud history with and historic association with the defence of our country. Merthyr was the largest iron-producing town in the world at the time of the Industrial Revolution, producing cannons and cannonballs for the Royal Navy, leading to a visit from Admiral Nelson himself in 1802 to the Cyfarthfa Ironworks. Our area is keen to renew this role in the 21st century and play a part in creating quality defence capabilities with the dedicated and committed workforce that we have. As I mentioned earlier, currently over 700 people are employed at the site, and these skilled and long-term employment opportunities are vital to the ongoing regeneration of the valleys. An area, heavy industry such as coal mining and steel have now ceased, and new industry and employment opportunities are so important to creating hope and growth in our communities. And in addition, as a proud supporter of the Union of the United Kingdom, it's hugely important that people across the whole of the UK feel included in the defence sector, and ongoing government investment in the defence capability should benefit communities in the UK and particularly in the South Wales Valleys. In closing, Mr Stewart, can I ask the Minister in response to address a few points? Whilst I fully appreciate that the investigation has to take its course, does you have any indication of what timescale is in place for the investigations to be concluded? The longer the uncertainty goes on, this will have an impact on the morale of the workforce in Merthyr Tydfil. And finally, I appreciate that the Minister is responding on behalf of the MOD. In the Chamber last month, I asked the Minister for Defence Readiness and Industry if he would meet staff and trade unions at General Dynamics as soon as possible to provide them with as much reassurance as possible, something he committed to do. Can I ask the Minister today if he will undertake to raise with the Minister the importance of this visit taking place at the earliest opportunity, and in the event that the investigations take longer than expected, will he commit in the meantime to ask the MOD to find a way to provide regular updates to the staff and workforce until more certainty can be provided? Thank you.
I'll be bringing in the front benches at 10:28. Katie Lair.
Thank you, Mr Stewart. As ever, it's a pleasure to serve with you in the chair, and thank you to my honourable and gallant friend for securing this debate today. As has already been laid out, the Ajax programme has been a disaster. It has been repeatedly delayed and enormously expensive. We have known for years about problems with noise and vibration. It is mystifying how these vehicles were signed off as safe, despite so obviously not being so. British soldiers have been permanently injured as a result. Clearly, the problems with Ajax did not begin under this government. The vehicles were expected to be combat ready by mid-2019. However, The decision about what to do with the programme now does, of course, fall to this government. But whatever they decide, this debacle cannot be allowed to continue. The programme's consistent failure sends a clear signal to those who have committed their lives to serving our country, that while they may be doing their duty to this country, the British government is not performing its duty to them. For how else are armed forces personnel supposed to interpret a programme which has been repeatedly delayed, racked up enormous costs and, as we heard last year, poses a direct risk to soldiers themselves? When we ask people to put their lives on the line to protect our freedoms, the very least that we can do is provide them with functional equipment on time, which does more harm to the enemy than it does to our own troops. This is not just an appalling disservice to Britain's armed forces, though that is awful. It is also a disaster for British taxpayers. The Ajax programme has a budget of £6.3 billion. That is enough to pay for the running of every court in England and Wales for 2 years. £6.3 billion of people's hard-earned money. These vehicles do not work, and I would like my money back. If Ajax were the only failure, it still would not be acceptable, but it might at least be written off as an aberration. But this pattern of the British government failing its duty to the armed forces is sadly far more widespread. In March last year, the former Armed Forces Minister told the House of Commons that the British Army's ammunition stockpile would be exhausted in just 10 days of warfare. The Ministry of Defence has said that it believes we will need to spend an additional £28 billion to meet its costs over the next 4 years. Yet at the last budget, just 2 months ago, defence spending rose by £500 million less than was projected in the summer. And this government hasn't just failed in supplying our armed forces with the tools they need to keep us safe. In repealing the protections put in place by the last government's Northern Ireland Legacy Act, for example, the government is opening the door to another wave of prosecutions against those who have previously served. How can all this be the right way to treat those who have risked their lives to keep us safe? What message does it send to those who might consider enlisting in the future? What other country would treat its former service personnel with such disregard? Ajax does not tell the whole story, but it is one recent and important example. How the government chooses to proceed from here will send a signal to those who are serving and those who might serve in future about whether their government intends to uphold its side of the bargain. Regardless of political party, we should all want our armed forces to know that we support them, not just with words, but materially. So I hope that the Minister will be able to provide some clarity about when we can expect a final verdict on Ajax and what steps the government is taking to ensure that future procurement is faster, more cost-effective and safer for those who are serving. That is the very least that our armed forces deserve.
Luke Charters.
Thank you, Mrs. Stewart. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairship, and may I congratulate the Honourable Member for Huntingdon for securing this debate. And I want to thank you for his service, of course, in the Yorkshire Regiment. May I take the House back to a visit I made to the NATO FLF contribution as part of Opca Brit. I spent time in a Charlie 2 tank, and what's most impressive is not the size or the armour or the firepower, it was the complete confidence that its crew had in the vehicle. Ajax was meant to deserve and earn the same trust. But before I come on to the failures in the programme, I just want to say something about the workers in South Wales. They deserve credit for their graft and determination and not blame. Mr Stewart, the Public Accounts Committee, which I was previously a member of, has made it clear what went wrong. It found the programme was overspecified from the outset, with around 1,200 individual requirements imposed on what was supposedly an adapted off-the-shelf design. In reality, Ajax was neither off-the-shelf nor fully bespoke, and what was in between was actually far riskier. Never again must defence procurements over-specify requirements. This should be a red flag right from the start. Mr Stewart, computer models were relied upon to assess vibration and noise rather than vigorous early testing. The Public Accounts Committee found that this approach had failed, and the department at the time did not fully understand the vehicle's characteristics before subjecting soldiers to trials. Our armed forces should never have been used as human guinea pigs. The independent Sheldon review is actually more damning. It found a culture in which bad news was softened as it travelled up the management chain. Senior leaders were left without a clear, honest picture of what was really happening. From this place today, can I thank all of the soldiers that stepped forward to raise safety concerns. And yet, despite the warnings that were raised, the safety notices that were issued, and the whistleblowers that came forward, GD repeatedly underplayed the scale of these issues. So it's reasonable to ask a simple question. if the design ultimately lied with the contractor, would the CEO of GD be happy to have their son or daughter sent into battlefield in an Ajax? And if these design failures did rest with GD, the taxpayer should not be left carrying the cost of retrofit. Mr Stewart, can I just touch briefly on defence exports? We've got to learn the lessons from those abroad, particularly Leopard, which is an MBT, but that platform, it was modular and it was upgradable and it was interoperable. That means it was a much stronger prospect for our defence exports. So when it comes to procurement, we've got to always bear defence exports in mind. There are wider lessons too for the forthcoming defence investment plan, which must make a decisive break. We need a system that's capable of designing and testing earlier on, rather than rushes into production in the hopes that problems can be fixed later on. Ajax must be a turning point, not just for this vehicle, but for how we procure defence capability in this country in the future. My honourable friend, the Minister, is one of the most impressive forces in British politics today. And if he can climb Mount Everest in just 5 days to raise money for our veterans, no less, I have no doubt in his ability to get to grips with even one of the most challenging problems facing defence procurement today. Thank you, Mr Stewart.
Gallant friend, the member for Huntingdon, for calling this important debate. Now, I want to briefly link the lessons of Ajax to wider concerns within MOD procurement, if I may, and indeed my honourable friend has frequently mentioned the Boxer, one of the things I want to just touch on. Having met with a key local manufacturer in my constituency, I've been made aware of the potential implication of issues with the UK Boxer mechanised infantry vehicles and Project Hunter, the procurement of laser protection and signature reduction systems under the Alternative Individual Weapons Programme. Now, I think it is essential that we are agile and apply the Ajax lessons to other procurements like these. Now, this is important locally in my constituency, as Royal Marines 42 Commando are based there and are potential customers of some of this equipment, and it's important nationally to make sure we ensure value for money, national security and operational capability. Now, this business in my constituency have raised issues with the Boxer, such as the procurement and performance of the periscopes, the driver's modules and the mission module. Now, it's been raised, Chair, with the RBSL, the prime contractor, Gus Periscopes UK, the supplier, the relevant defence equipment and support teams, UTAC, and then local MPs, one of whom is the Minister of Defence Readiness and Industry, and another one is a member of the Defence Select Committee, and indeed the Secretary of State for Defence. Now, to date, no response has really been received. I raised a question in the recent Ajax statement and the Minister was interested, and I'm waiting for a response from him in terms of a meeting. But ultimately, we need to ensure that we take lessons from Ajax and speed up talking about these potential issues with Boxer as well. And then just, if I may, touch on Project Hunter. It was designed to procure up to 10,000 KS-1 rifles for our military over a 10-year period. And included was an optical scope, including a laser protection system and a noise and muzzle flash suppression system. Now, to date, of the significant number of rifles procured, 0 have been equipped with that system. And we've heard from Ukrainian veterans charities that up to 360 snipers have been blinded as a result of using this equipment, something that I think we should be taking really seriously. Now, the implications, if funding is not allocated for this promised addition to these weapons, is that we do not have this laser protection system, which leaves our soldiers vulnerable to offensive countermeasures. It risks significant injuries, but also, due to the reflective nature of unprotected sighting systems, the threat of counter-detection is significantly higher, which allows opposing forces to target our soldiers. There's also a significant reputational risk for our government if we deploy these systems without adequate protection, especially when we have these reported threats. Now, I thank you for allowing me to mention that within this wider debate, but I would be interested if the Minister could use his powers to speed up the conversation that my local constituent business is hoping to have with senior figures, including the Minister for Procurement, to ensure that we at speed learn from the lessons of Ajax and apply it, as we are spending multi-million pounds of our money at a considerably risky time in the international landscape, to ensure that we can change the, we may not be able to hopefully change the direction of a tanker. I appreciate it's a big job to do that, but ultimately, if we don't take these new bits of information seriously, we risk having another debate on a different topic in the future, like we're having today.
Ruth Jones.
Pleasure to serve under your chairmanship today, and I thank the honourable and gallant member for Huntingdon for bringing this important debate today. And I'd like to start by paying tribute to our armed forces and those who put their lives on the line to keep our country safe. We ask a great deal of our servicemen and women, so the least we can do as parliamentarians is ensure our armed forces have the equipment they need. Like other members, I was extremely concerned to hear about the reports of soldiers reporting noise and vibration symptoms during a training exercise on the 22nd of November last year. I pay tribute to the Ministry of Defence in moving swiftly to respond to these concerns. The safety of our armed service personnel must remain paramount. Given the importance of the Ajax programme, I welcome the Government's focus on ensuring that the ongoing investigations are concluded swiftly. The facts must be identified urgently. I would also remind the Minister that any delay in the conclusion of these investigations comes at a cost. It means workers concerned about their future, ongoing confusion about the safety of the rigorously tested Ajax, and opportunities to export Ajax to our allies being put at risk. Mr Stewart, the Ajax programme is an extremely welcome product of a deliberate choice by successive governments to develop our sovereign capability to design and manufacture Britain's next generation of armoured fighting vehicles. Ajax is not only built in Britain, it is, more importantly, built in Wales. General Dynamics UK facilities in South Wales are a critical part of the Welsh manufacturing landscape, supporting 680 employees across sites in Merthyr Tydfil and Oakdale in my own constituency. And I was delighted to be able to visit General Dynamics' Oakdale facility just before Christmas to meet with some of the 200+ staff working there. Whilst visiting, I saw the wide range of skills being employed on site, especially the integration of advanced digital technologies which make Ajax such a pioneering vehicle. As the world's first fully digitalised armoured fighting vehicle, Ajax is well positioned in the international market as allied countries seek to update their armed forces. Many of these procurement cycles are expected to conclude in the next 12 to 18 months, making the timing of the MOD's review of Ajax critical. Successful export of the Ajax could be worth up to £20 billion in the future, and it's essential to sustaining and growing sovereign AFV manufacturing facilities in South Wales. In learning the lessons of the Challenger programme, we cannot allow the British Army to be loaded with the lifetime costs of a unique vehicle. In responding to these threats, the latest Strategic Defence Review highlighted the need to expand the capabilities of armoured platforms and integrate these with evolving digital technologies. Ajax will play a vital role in delivering on these aims and the wider objective of digitising the British Army. Ajax's technical functionality and pioneering nature also means it's unique and cannot be easily replaced by an alternative. In closing, I would like to reinforce to the Minister the importance of the ongoing reviews, not only to the welfare of our soldiers, but the wider supply chain and our sovereign manufacturing and defence capabilities. And I would urge the Minister to ensure the reviews are completed as quickly as possible so we can have certainty for all involved. Thank you.
Jim Shannon.
Serve under your chairship, and a big thank you to the honourable member for Huntingdon for setting the scene incredibly well with lots of detail and information which is beyond my knowledge, and hopefully that has helped set the scene for the answers from the Minister. Ajax was and is intended to be a cornerstone of the British Army's future capacity, providing modern awareness while protecting the soldiers who operate. So getting this right is essential, not only for military effectiveness, but to ensure safety for those operating. Look very much forward to the Minister's response, and I know we will not be disappointed. Mr Chairman, we have seen some issues surrounding Ajax, and it is convenient, but also of major importance that these are resolved. For example, some service personnel experience injuries from excessive noise and vibration, resulting in manufacturing being paused and major safety investigations launched as a result. They were put down to design integration issues rather than just error. And furthermore, there have been major delays with full operational capability being delayed for many years. The programme valued at some £5.5 billion, with billions being spent before vehicles were even usable. So there are major concerns here regarding value for money. The Ministry of Defence is responsible for keeping personnel safe, ensuring the programme delivers value and capability, and Ajax must meet the Army's operational needs and fit into the wider defence plans, rather than persisting with a system that cannot safely or effectively be used. There are now concerns amongst honourable members, and honourable member for Huntingdon had set the scene so well to tell us what they were regarding its use. But after the last debate in Parliament in December on this issue, I was and am pleased that the Minister has committed at that time to resolving the issues. That's why his reply today will be incredibly important for this debate. It is important. Yeah, absolutely.
He may know the previous National Armaments Director, Andy Starr. Sorry, Mr. Chair. He may know that the previous National Armaments Director, Andy Starr, was paid a performance bonus in 23-24 of £165,000 and another one in 24-25 of £160,000 while this was going wrong on his watch. Does he agree with me that if Ajax is unfortunately finally scrapped, Mr. Stark should pay that money back?
And I would be of the opinion if he hasn't done the job, then there should be no bonus. I would think that would be the same with anybody, no matter who they are. You get a bonus because you do it right. Anyway, the main thing is that the Minister is the person who can perhaps answer that question better. It is important that there are no knock-on effects of these issues and how they could impact the likes of essential supplies getting to the battle zone. Delays have left the Army without a modern tracked reconnaissance vehicle, forcing a reliance on ageing platforms that are not up to speed for the modern world of today. A full operating capability is now expected 28-29 years later than originally planned. It is down, I believe, to the MOD to ensure that our Army does not suffer as a result of this. I conclude with this, Mr. Chairman. Resolving the issues with the Ajax programme is vital for the safety of personnel, the effectiveness of the British Army and the credibility of the MOD procurement process. So I look forward to hearing from the Minister and Government how they can address these issues and restore confidence in what should have been a successful programme for the United Kingdom. Thank you.
Ymnia Griffiths.
Well, the Minister will be fully aware that an enormous amount of expertise, investment and effort has gone into the development of the Ajax vehicle, producing a vehicle of very significant and unique capabilities. I absolutely understand that we want to ensure the high quality performance and safety of this vehicle, and to date there has been extensive testing of the vehicle over thousands of kilometres where noise and vibration limits have been well within acceptable levels. And I understand that the latest testing will shortly be completed. So my ask of the Minister is very simple. Once the latest testing results are available for ministerial consideration, we need ministers to give absolute priority to the analysis and consideration of those results and ensure that decisions on next steps are made without delay. Time is of the essence. We need clarity on Ajax as soon as possible. What would be unforgivable would be if the latest tests vindicated the quality and viability of the Ajax project, but then it encounters delays with ministerial schedules and the machinery of government, which compound the problems and loses valuable opportunities. Uncertainty is a pervasive killer. Any delay will sow the seeds of doubt in the minds of potential customers. There's been huge investment in Ajax, and clearly to pay its way, to justify the investment in such an advanced capability, we need to attract orders from abroad. And I understand there's an important opportunity to showcase Ajax in early February. If this opportunity is lost through poor prioritisation of the Procurement Minister's priorities, that would be crazy. Then there's the workforce. Uncertainty for them is devastating, the fear of losing your job. And we have a very loyal workforce in Merthyr who've gone above and beyond to deliver on Ajax. Not only do they want jobs for now, but they want to see a future for young people, which is so dependent on securing orders for Ajax. And then there are all those who work in the supply chain. It may be that ministers will decide that further work's needed. Again, I must stress the point that if so, it needs to be done as nimbly as it can be. Decisions on Ajax will have a ripple effect on wider industry. I absolutely support our industrial strategy and our determination to rebuild our industrial base and to make sure that we have the capabilities to develop the likes of Ajax. For too long, procurement procedures have just looked at headline price and failed to give due consideration to the huge benefits of securing jobs here in the UK in terms of good jobs, tax revenue, social cohesion and, as brought home more vividly through COVID and Ukraine conflict, our resilience and security. When we look at the current Ajax situation, you can see why some might say, why invest? Why bother with the risk? Wouldn't it just be easier to buy off the peg, to let another nation take that risk? Well, apart from the fact that by that route we may well end up with a substandard product, with the problems emerging only after purchase, what happens when, as we saw in COVID, other nations prioritise their own needs or supply routes are otherwise sabotaged? So, no one factory exists in isolation. If we need further proof of our independence, the JLR cyber attack brought it home very starkly. So if, for example, in the JLR crisis had led to one local company, a supplier of a specific part of JLR going bust, there would have been contagion in that it would have had an immediate effect on the other car companies it supplied. Conversely, if we implement our industrial strategies supporting our foundation industries like steel and developing our advanced technologies such as semiconductors and make the UK a vibrant hub of new high-tech industries, they feed off each other and that becomes an attractive environment for investment and aspirational workers.
Ajax is an important part of this ecosystem. To sum up, Mr Stewart, I'm urging the Minister and his colleagues to ensure that as soon as the testing information and data is provided to them, they ensure that the necessary analysis is undertaken without delay, and they make their decision without delay for the following reasons. Any delay will undermine confidence of potential purchasers in Ajax. It will lead to us missing vital opportunities in the purchasing timetable of key potential customers, further demoralise the workforce, and any delay could undermine broader investor confidence in our industrial strategy. A lot depends on how the Minister handles this issue.
Then can I thank and congratulate colleagues for their discipline, and last but not least, Chris Evans.
Mr Stewart, thank you for your serving your chairmanship. It would be very easy to blame the last Conservative government for the operational difficulties burdened by the Ministry of Defence, General Dynamics and the British Army from the outset of the Ajax programme. But I could not do that with the member for Raleigh and Wickford sitting in front of me, who very often was a critic when he sat in the government benches, and I've lost count the amount of times he said that heads should roll at Abbey Wood. It's a shame nobody listened to him at the time, I think. We do stand here just 3 years earlier. 37 out of 39 projects are either marked as red or amber by the NAO, National Audit Office. This is unacceptable. And if we just look at the criticisms of the Ajax project, realistic targets that accounted for the vehicle's bespoke capabilities were not set, and its complex requirements largely ignored. Whistleblowers, as we have heard, were not listened to. This resulted in Ajax demonstration and manufacturing phases overlapping, which posed acute technical and safety risks. Progress reports were often vague or overly optimistic, as experienced in November. Ministers were assured that Ajax had achieved initial operating capability and was prepared for the Salisbury exercise. We have to ask questions why that was the case. A gross overestimation put the health of 30 soldiers at risk, and that is the nub of the problem. This is not simple economics. When we send someone into theatres, the Minister will know this, and the equipment is obsolete. You are putting their lives at risk. If they lose their life, it's their family you have to be accountable to, and that's what we have to remember. It is not about the defence companies. It is not about the equipment. It is about the soldier we are sending into theatre, and we should never lose sight of that matter. But we also have to look at the cultural issue of the MOD, which the member for Raleigh and Wickford constantly spoke about. Between 2011 and 2023, the Ministry of Defence welcomed 5 project managers, each served for approximately 2 to 3 years. This job was unsustainable due to the complexity and breadth of its portfolio, and which did not allow effective oversight. But I also want to turn now to the Morpheus project, unfortunately delivered by the General Dynamics Land Division. This was the intended computing system for Ajax. It fell short of its requirements, even though it was the same company developing it. Ajax was expected to be the Army's first set of vehicles based on one fully digitised platform. This platform is set to include advanced sensors and enhanced communication systems, allowing vehicles to gather and immediately share information with other units. In stark contrast, Morpheus incurred significant costs and a delay of 3 years, during which time Ajax's ability to exchange information was severely limited. This platform had the potential to significantly improve the British Army's digital capabilities, a sector this country could have been a worldwide leader in. Its failure was nothing short of acceptable. Mr Stewart, there is no doubt the MOD has and is a uniquely failing department. In opposition, the Labour called for the MOD to be the first department subject to the new Office of Value for Money, with a commitment to commission the NAO to conduct a across-the-board survey of the MOD's wants and needs. Okay, sorry.
James McCleary, Liberal Democrat spokesman.
Thank you, Mr Stewart. It's a pleasure to serve under you today, and I congratulate the honourable and gallant member for Huntingdon for securing this timely and very important debate. So Ajax takes its name from the Iliad. In that great epic, there are in fact 2 Ajaxes. Ajax the Great, the famous hero of Greek mythology, and Ajax the Lesser. I think it's pretty clear from what we've heard today which one of those this project most resembles. Ajax stands as perhaps the starkest illustration of everything that's gone wrong with defence procurement in this country. Of course.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way. The new medium helicopter contract has been reportedly delayed. We now risk losing the site at Yeovil if the contract is not awarded by March. Does the honourable member agree that such delays to contracting are undermining our national and economical security, and that the new medium helicopter contract needs to be awarded as soon as possible?
thank my honourable friend for his intervention. He's a committed advocate for his constituents in Yeovil and has raised this on a number of occasions. And absolutely, I do agree, we run a real risk of not only losing the ability to build our own medium...
But we will stay focused on Ajax, notwithstanding the intervention.
Indeed. So let me be clear from the outset, back to Ajax. The possible collapse of this multi-decade £6.2 billion programme is deeply alarming. It demands answers, it demands accountability, and most importantly, it demands urgent action. The facts are stark and troubling. Just weeks ago on Salisbury Plain, during what should have been a routine training exercise, more than 30 of our soldiers fell ill. They were not injured in combat. They were not facing down an enemy on some distant battlefield. They were training on British soil, in British vehicles, built with British taxpayers' money. And they were vomiting, and they were shaking uncontrollably. Some spent 10 to 15 hours in these vehicles and emerged requiring urgent medical care. This is not the first time we've heard such reports. Indeed, the Ajax programme has been plagued by issues of noise and vibration since mid-2020. A stop notice was issued in June 2021. All dynamic movement was halted. The programme underwent what was termed a significant reset. Training resumed in 2023, only to be paused again recently in 2025. Astonishingly, this programme has been on pause for 20% of its entire life. 20%. And what was the response from those in charge? In November, just before the latest incidents, we were told that Ajax had achieved initial operating capability. The Minister for Defence Readiness visited the General Dynamics factory in South Wales and declared that the issues were firmly in the past. He told us that he had been reassured from the top of the army that the vehicle was safe. Indeed, the programme was so apparently successful that the MOD announced in November that it had just won an international award for Mega Project of the Year. 3 weeks later, he had to return to this House to confess that he had been misled. Misled by the Chief of the General Staff, misled by the then acting National Armaments Director. These are not junior officials. These are the most senior figures in our defence establishment providing assurances about safety that have proven to be utterly unfounded. So I must ask, what kind of system allows this to happen? What kind of institutional culture permits such a fundamental failure of honesty and accountability? And what does this say about the state of our armed forces that senior officials and officers declared initial operating capability when long-standing problems had merely been mitigated, with new seats and earplugs in some cases, rather than actually fixed? The Minister must now be absolutely clear about what the government's contingency plans are if Ajax is deemed unsafe. Moreover, he must explain what the impact will be on our NATO commitments if Ajax is either further delayed due to required upgrades or scrapped altogether. Our allies are watching, our adversaries are watching, and what they see is chaos. This is not simply about one troubled programme, catastrophic though Ajax's failures have been. This programme illustrates the deep-seated problems with defence procurement that has plagued our armed forces for years. They deserve better than endless delays, cost overruns and capability gaps that have become the hallmark of how we equip those who defend us. Consider the litany of failures. Ajax was ordered in 2014. It was supposed to be fully in service by 2019. Here we are in 2026, and not only is it not in service, we are now investigating whether it is fundamentally unsafe. The vehicle was originally designed for weights of up to 26 tonnes, though through what the defence analysts politely call scope creep, the Army loading the programme with 1,200 separate capability requirements, the weight ballooned to over 43 tonnes. A single vehicle can now cost well over £10 million in its most expensive form. And what have we got for this money? We've got vehicles that make our soldiers sick. We've got a programme that has consumed vast resources and delivered nothing but embarrassment. We have got General Dynamics winning awards for project controls whilst producing vehicles that cannot be safely operated. I note with interest that when asked whether performance bonuses relating to Ajax have been paid to officials over the last 3 years, the Ministry responded that this information is not held centrally and therefore cannot be provided without incurring disproportionate costs. Certainly.
They could tell us the bonuses of the head of DE&S. The idea they don't know who else got a bonus is totally and utterly laughable.
I do, and I thank the Honourable Member for his intervention. Yes, absolutely extraordinary response. And all we conclude is what they mean is, yes, bonuses have been awarded, some of them quite substantial, but we would rather not tell you exactly how much people have been rewarded for presiding over this disaster. The senior responsible officer for Ajax earns a salary in excess of £160,000, nearly as much as the Prime Minister. with the potential for bonuses of 25 to 30% on top. So we have people earning £200,000 or more whilst delivering a programme that has been stopped for a fifth of its existence and is now under multiple safety investigations. It is not merely incompetence, this is systemic failure. The 2023 review of this programme exposed precisely that, systemic and institutional problems. We need to know what progress was made in fixing these issues. We need to know what safeguards are in place to prevent further delays, cost overruns, and most importantly, threats to our soldiers' safety. So can I ask the Minister directly, is the Ministry of Defence considering an internal investigation into how this programme was able to progress this far without these major issues being identified? Because someone somewhere has been signing off on milestones and accepting deliverables when the fundamental problems were still unresolved. The Liberal Democrats have long argued for fundamental reform of defence procurement, and Ajax demonstrates precisely why such reform is so desperately needed. We would tackle these long-standing problems by replacing the current system of defence reviews with a more flexible system of continuous reviews of security threats and evolution of defence plans. As has been dramatically demonstrated in recent weeks, the world does not wait for our periodic review cycles, and neither should our procurement system. We would ensure that defence procurement is part of a comprehensive industrial strategy, securing a reliable, long-term pipeline of equipment procurements. Industry needs certainty, our armed forces need certainty. The current approach provides neither, especially with continued delays on releasing the Defence Investment Plan. We would collaborate properly with our European and NATO partners on development of new defence technologies, equipment, systems and training. And we would make capital spending allocations more flexible to reduce what is called annuality and focus instead on meeting the required in-service dates. And we would invest properly in recruiting, retaining and training staff at the Ministry of Defence with specialist skills, reducing its dependency and expenditure on external consultants. The concerns about over Ajax should raise alarm bells about the continuing poor state of procurement at a time when Britain must be rearming rapidly. The geopolitical situation demands we get this right. Ukraine has shown us what modern warfare requires. Our adversaries are not standing still, and we simply cannot afford these failures. The Army pausing the use of Ajax vehicles raises serious questions about the operational readiness of the units that rely on these vehicles. How does this disruption affect deployment plans at a time when our armed forces need to be fully prepared? What is the impact on training schedules? What message does this send to our personnel about how we value their safety? The Ministry of Defence has launched a safety investigation, citing an abundance of caution, but the public and this House deserve clarity. What exactly is being investigated, who is involved, and when will this inquiry conclude? The Minister has said the review will be conducted at pace but not rushed. Which is it? Because the armed forces deserve transparency and reassurance, and they deserve it now. This all sends a worrying signal to our adversaries, which is why it is vital that the government outlines how it will move quickly to resolve the issues and adopt our proposals for a wider overhaul of the procurement system. We cannot afford to lumber on with a broken system while the world around us becomes more dangerous. Difficult decisions lie ahead. The Defence Secretary has indicated that scrapping the programme in its entirety is possible. Given what we know, given the years of delays and billions spent, given that soldiers are still falling ill in these vehicles, it is right to give that option serious consideration. The mythological Ajax died of shame. One hopes that those responsible for this modern Ajax programme might feel at least some measure of that emotion. But more than shame, we need action. The Ajax programme must not be allowed to fail in silence. Too much is at stake. Most important thing of all is the safety and well-being of those who serve and be able to depend on them. Absolutely.
His Majesty's Opposition Spokesman, Mark Francois.
Thank you very much, Sir Graham. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship this morning, and I congratulate my honourable friend for Huntingdon for introducing this debate so very ably. Perhaps I should begin by declaring an interest as consistently one of the greatest critics of the Ajax programme in the House of Commons for around a decade. Indeed, being very much an Ajax sceptic, I once described it at the Defence Select Committee as, and I quote, a reconnaissance vehicle that's about as stealthy as a Ford Transit van full of spanners. My real epiphany, however, was when I visited the Ajax factory with the same committee in March 2022. When even the shop floor staff, for whom I have much sympathy in this situation, it's not their fault, were telling us that the vehicle was deeply flawed. Very quickly.
I don't want to steal my honourable friend's thunder, but when we were on that visit, do you think it was absolutely shocking that when we met the team that were building Ajax, they said that no two hulls had ever left the factory that were the same. They were all slightly different, and that was a flaw in the whole building project.
Thank you. I have with me the actual minute of the committee visit of 2022, which confirms exactly what my honourable friend just said. Ajax's genesis goes back several decades under governments of multiple colours. Ajax effectively began life in the 1980s under the Conservatives as an Anglo-American reconnaissance vehicle programme called Tracer. Eventually that broke down and the United States continued unilaterally to develop the Bradley family. Back in Britain, though, under Tony Blair's Labour government, the programme then evolved into the Future Rapid Effects System, or FRES, which itself ran into considerable trouble. Indeed, as the Defence Select Committee report of February 2007, I have it here, brutally concluded, this is a sorry story of indecision, constantly changing requirements and delay. It is high time the MOD decided where its priorities lay. That was 19 years ago. Following much criticism, FRES was abandoned and then eventually re-emerged as the Ajax family of armoured vehicles with 6 variants. In March 2010, during the dying months of the Brown government, the decision was taken to meet the requirement by purchasing a vehicle known as Ascod, which was also being procured for the Spanish army in Spain from the US contractor General Dynamics. Crucially, this was originally intended to be an off-the-shelf procurement with minimum design modification in order to enter service in 2017. The coalition government at the Cardiff NATO summit in 2014 announced that Ajax would be manufactured in Merthyr Tydfil using hulls imported from Spain. So in short, Labour originally ordered Ajax, but the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrats then decided where it would be built. Unusually, this was to encompass both the development and production contract running simultaneously. Moreover, an early decision was taken to up-gun Ajax from a 30mm to a 40mm weapon, involving a major redesign of the turret. In all, the Army eventually insisted on an incredible 1,200 additional requirements, totally contrary to the off-the-shelf principle. Concerns regarding vibration and noise-related injuries to crews were first flagged by Defence Scientific and Technical Laboratories, DSTL, as far back as 2014. But, crucially, it was not until November 2020, 6 years later, that ministers were first informed that trials had been suspended over safety concerns. DNS, after much internal angst, then issued a formal stop notice in June 2021. The Ajax trials were eventually restarted in 2022, but not before the programme had been the subject of trenchant criticism by the Defence Committee, the Infrastructure Projects Authority, the National Audit Office, which famously concluded that Ajax was flawed from the start, and the Public Accounts Committee to boot. In 2022, Defence Secretary Ben Wallace, rightfully exasperated both with the endless delays but also the quality of advice to ministers, commissioned a wholly independent QC, Clive Sheldon, to undertake a detailed review of Ajax. Sheldon's 172-page review, I have it here, was excoriating. To try and summarise it in one sentence, it painted a picture of a completely dysfunctional UK procurement system, and one in which serious concerns articulated at junior level were routinely ignored or explained away by senior managers. Nevertheless, the Army began preparing to bring Ajax into operational service. On the 5th of November last year, the Procurement Minister headed up a major media event at General Dynamics' Aid Production Facility at Merthyr to declare that Ajax had successfully achieved its initial operating capability. Given the controversial history of the programme, the Minister, who can't be here today but is no fool, did exactly what I would have done and asked for written assurances that the programme was safe, including from the Chief of the General Staff and the National Armaments Director. One key question, incidentally, is who told both of them that it was safe? Anyway, armed with letters from both these very senior gentlemen confirming Ajax was indeed ready to safely enter service, the Minister then went ahead, we believe in good faith, declaring to the media that Ajax was a vehicle that, in his words, that is safe, effective and truly cutting edge. I can only therefore imagine his horror when on the 22nd of November, a major regimental exercise to test Ajax's battleworthiness on Salisbury Plain, including 2 squadrons of Ajax vehicles and a number of command and support variants, some 60 vehicles in all, had to be rapidly abandoned after 23 of the crews reported serious vibration and noise-related injuries. Subsequent to this, the Minister then halted even trials on the individual Ajax test vehicles after further injuries to test crews were discovered too. The response of GD UK, in the form of Mr Robert Skivington, one of their then managers, was disgustingly to blame the Army's crews and their commanders in an expletive-ridden social media post. In my sorry decade-long experience of General Dynamics, that just about sums their management, not their workers, but their management up. Moreover, I had a chance encounter with the Ajax senior responsible owner, Mr Chris Bobrick, at the DSEI exhibition last September, during which he categorically assured me that Ajax was now safe. He even shook my hand on it, Sir Graham. So if the Minister feels angry that he was misinformed, I feel exactly the same way. Everyone agrees we simply can't go on with this endless stop-start cycle regarding Ajax, not least as it represents the Army's largest procurement programme, at $5.5 billion for acquisition, or $6.3 billion including life cycle costs. And it's the Army's biggest chunk of the long-delayed defence investment plan. So in short, as safety is paramount, Ministers now have one of 2 stark options over Ajax. Either they must fix it or fail it once and for all. Let's look at both. Ajax has always been too big to fail. Many senior generals, senior civil servants and GD directors have their careers effectively invested in the programme. Indeed, Sheldon relates in some detail the reluctance over a long period of D&S senior management to even admit that there were serious failings with the vehicle. I'm not a qualified engineer, so I can't pronounce on whether the problem is fixable. Some analysts argue the vehicle is now so heavy, at up to 43 tonnes, it's just 2 tonnes lighter than a World War II Panther main battle tank, and so flawed that it can't be saved, short of a fundamental redesign which would cost billions. However, if this really can be sorted by technical means, then conceptually we surely need a deep fix, which effectively puts the problems to bed definitively. If that can somehow be achieved at GD's expense, then all well and good. Nevertheless, the risk is that the MOD and GD merely tweak the vehicle yet again, and then rerun that exercise perhaps 6 months from now with almost exactly the same outcome. In that context, I would humbly remind the Minister of Einstein's definition of madness, which is doing the same thing over and over again and somehow expecting a different result. Conversely, if it emerges that Ajax is somehow fundamentally flawed and can't be fixed, then the other option is to end the cycle of denial, rip off the plaster and fail it. This would then involve the Ministry of Defence in potentially tortuous negotiations with General Dynamics, in essence to get their money back, so they could spend it on something else, such as the Saab CV90, which now serves successfully in many NATO countries and which they lost out to Ajax in the first place. If GD were not wanting to accept liability, although many think they should, the MOD would probably have no recourse other than to sue them for liquidated damages for delivering a vehicle that was demonstrably not fit for purpose. To conclude, sir, that could involve the department in a highly aggressive court case, potentially lasting years, but which would no doubt also be highly injurious to the reputation of General Dynamics as a global defence manufacturer. This can't go on. Ministers must fix it or fail it once and for all.
Minister.
It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, and I'm grateful to the honourable and gallant member for Huntingdon for securing this debate. Now, it won't be lost on you collective that in the audience that I'm not the Defence Minister for Readiness, Resilience or Industry, but I am a former Royal Marine 24 years service, and now the Minister responsible for the Armed Forces. I can assure honourable members of this government's commitment to the safety of our service personnel. This is absolutely paramount. It underpins a bond of trust between all MOD activity and the government, and it's a vital strand of our responsibility is to ensure that our service personnel are provided with the correct equipment that is safe but also reliable and effective. This is why ministers were so alarmed by the symptoms reported by 35 soldiers who'd operated Ajax vehicles during November's exercise Titan Storm. Now, I can update members that of those 35 people, 9 are now back to normal duties. 2 were found to be suffering from symptoms unrelated to Ajax, and the remaining 24 continue to be monitored by our medical services, primarily for hearing and vibration, and will ensure they receive all necessary support as they progress. I can also confirm that my honourable friend, the Minister for Defence, Readiness and Industry, alongside the Chief of the General Staff, will be visiting affected units and speaking to affected soldiers later this week, having written to them at the end of the year. Exercise Titan Storm represented the latest chapter in a programme that's been well documented here, which has been documented by parliamentary committees and independent MOD reports. Ajax was approved in 2014 with a date for initial operating capability of 2020. Today, after significant delays, just over 180 vehicles have been delivered. And the symptoms reported by some of our soldiers operating Ajax during exercise Titan Storm have led to 4 separate rigorous investigations. The Minister for Defence, Readiness and Industry plans to further update the House on this matter next week. And so colleagues will understand that I may leave some of the specific questions, including the 37 from the member of Huntingdon, on average 1 a minute. I will leave those perhaps to the Minister to answer in detail. Now, along with the investigations into the vehicles by the Defence Accident Investigation Branch, as well as the Army Safety Investigation Team, which were set to the Parliament by the Minister for Defence, Readiness and Industry on the 8th of December, a ministerial-led review into the implementation of previous recommendations has also been commissioned. This focuses on the basis of written assurances given to ministers ahead of the announcing of initial operating capability in November. As set out in his written ministerial statement on the 18th of December, the Minister for Defence, Readiness and Industry subsequently also directed a pause on all Ajax trials to allow for an investigation into a second safety incident reported during a trial at Bovington on the 12th of December. Each of the 23 affected vehicles have now undergone 45-point inspections, with further instrumental testing, including for noise and vibration, taking place literally as we speak. In that instant, the affected soldier received medical support and did not require hospitalisation. The vehicle involved was not one of the 23 from exercise Titan Storm. It was a separate vehicle being used to establish a safety baseline for comparison. I can confirm that that soldier has now returned to duty with no issues whatsoever, and discussions are ongoing between the Minister and officials within the Department on the appropriate next steps regarding the potential restart of those trials. As many of my Welsh colleagues have pointed out, the Ajax vehicles are built in Merthyr Tydfil to support a UK-wide supply chain of more than 230 companies and over 4,100 jobs. And because of the importance of the programme to South Wales, the Minister has been in close contact with the Welsh Government, with the Minister for Defence, Readiness and Industry meeting the Welsh Economy Minister, Rebecca Evans, on the 15th of December. Now, as I mentioned earlier, because previous investigations and adjustments should have fixed the recent challenges to the programme, the Minister for DRI has put in place a ministerial-led review that will assess how the Department has implemented the recommendations of previous reviews and suggest improvements to the process of providing timely and accurate information to ministers. To ensure the independence and rigour of that process, this review was conducted by experts who are not part of the Ajax programme. Ministers, the Chief of General Staff and officials are also working closely with General Dynamics to resolve the issues and will continue to do so. Most recently at ministerial level, the Minister of DRI met with the senior managers from General Dynamics on the 9th of December, and he is planning to meet them again next week, as well as future plans to meet the workforce again, which are in train. It's important that each of the investigation teams are given the time and space required to get to the bottom of the recent incidents and past failures so that we can take the most appropriate and accountable next steps. And I want to be clear that there is no predetermined outcome. Ministers will be led by the facts, and all options are absolutely on the table. As the Defence Secretary has said, when it comes to this programme, we must either back it or indeed scrap it. And
I thank the Minister for giving way. When or if trials resume, what assurances are we going to get that no future British troops are going to be put in harm's way by testing Ajax?
So I can assure the honourable member, and with his background, that the safety of our armed forces will be the #1 priority when we commence those trials. That's got to be the baseline common denominator as we move forward. But I'll just reiterate, the Defence Secretary said back it or scrap it, and it is the evidence that will allow us to make that decision. Now, just to cover off on some of the 37 questions that were covered early on, when we talk about initial operating capability, there's just a slight dichotomy here of where we mentioned a perceived rush to IOC for Ajax on one hand, and then on the other hand, you're collectively, the honourable members are asking why Boxer's IOC is moving. It can't be one or the other. We've got to allow the teams, the experts, to ensure that IOC is met in the safest possible manner, and any lessons from Ajax, as has been mentioned by some of the honourable members, are pulled across into the Boxer programme and other big capability programmes, so we understand and learn from it. We are also, in some cases, our own worst enemy. Over 1,000 capability requirement changes throughout the programme. As we change the capability, the platform changes, the cost changes, the time trialling system changes, and indeed, we need to reduce that as we move forward with major capabilities. Now, the MIN-DRI will update the House in due course. It will cover things such as the capability changes and requirements, how many noise vibration issues in Titan Storm, and indeed the rest of the multitude of very detailed questions that were asked earlier on today. On British military doctrine, it's really important to recognise that Ukraine is changing the whole character of conflict and how we fight. So terms such as armoured recce, ranges of gun systems, the reason why we built the tank in the first place, to carry a gun, to deliver firepower at pace, are changing because of the development of technology. And so we're wrestling with a whole set of capability changes, a change in the character of conflict, not learning false lessons from Ukraine, pulling the most effective ones and drawing them into our capability programmes that in some cases were set in place 11, 10, 15 years ago. And so it's a very complex system of moving forward. But what I can assure you is we are learning those lessons from Ukraine, trying to incorporate them as best we can into the current programmes. What I would say is that Ajax started in 2014, and we have had 10 years of progress, but also a huge amount of mistakes as we move through. Those lessons will be pulled across into Boxer. The individuals from Merthyr Tydfil just outlined the invaluable skills and capability of the staff that have actually created these systems, and it is absolutely second to none, some of those capabilities that they brought to bear. The investigation will report, or the MIN-DRI will report next week, and he's more than happy to meet both union and industry visit in due course. The honourable member from Kent, Weald of Kent, just highlighted some issues with the direct threat to our armed forces this capability may present. What I would say is allow the facts to do the talking, allow the review to come out next week, allow the report to the House, and then let's work out whether this capability can actually add value, whether it's in the armoured recce space or armoured infantry roles, and so on. But importantly, from my perspective, is allowing the facts and the honesty of that review to pull through. Now, I want to express my gratitude once again to the honourable member and gallant member for Huntingdon for bringing the debate, and to all members for the continued attention to the Ajax programme. I trust that we've collectively been clear where we stand on this. Multiple investigations are underway. All Ajax activity, training, exercise and trials has been paused until these investigations are complete. Ministers will receive findings in the coming weeks, and all options remain on the table. Importantly, throughout all of this, and it's been mentioned multiple times, and I've been at the bottom of the food chain in the military as well, thank you to Alfie and Fill Your Boots. Thank you to, in particular, the men and the officers throughout for highlighting these concerns and speaking truth to power. And importantly, thank you to collectively armed forces for working collaboratively with us to come to an amenable solution that gives them the capability that they indeed deserve.
I'd like to thank everybody for participating in the debate today. Obviously, a very detailed debate with a lot of detail that went down. I appreciate that the members, the Welsh members who are here today, have represented the workers who work in the factory in Merthyr Tydfil extremely well. And I think it's important that their voice is also heard in this debate. I think from my own personal perspective, it's very, very important that we focus on how to deliver Ajax as a capability. And I appreciate everything that the Minister said about the changing character of conflict and the changing nature of warfare. Ukraine has certainly moved the dial on, particularly on armoured warfare and the survivability and lethality of armour going forwards. And I know that the Chief of the General Staff has a very, very detailed view on how he wants to progress our lethality across the Army in particular with regards to what that looks like going forwards. Ajax is in danger of being a platform that has been superseded by events and is indeed now potentially almost out of date. And I think it's important that we recognise how to make that a relevant platform going forwards, given that it is a significant investment. Yes, it's late, but we can still utilise that vehicle. If we can harness the capability that it is capable of, and having spoken to soldiers who've used the platform, those that have used the platform successfully, and there are some, have been very, very positive about the capability of the vehicle. I think the wider issue is that we don't have an armoured capability that backs that up. It is the tip of the spear, but the handle of the spear, should we say, is perhaps not up to standard. And so I think there has to be some serious concerns around how we maintain the capability of Challenger, what the armoured infantry looks like going forwards. But I would like to thank everybody for participating in the debate today, and I'll bring my comments to a close.
The question is that this House has considered the future of the Ajax programme. As many of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. Order, order. The sitting is suspended. Well, it's not. It moves straight over. Please, we move quickly over to the next debate. Thanks, Minister. Mark, I only indulge you because you called me Sir Graham. You I will call Graham Ledbetter to move the motion. I will then call the Minister to respond. I remind other members that they may only make a speech with prior permission from the member in charge of the debate and indeed the Minister. You need both. There will not be an opportunity for the member in charge to wind up, as is the convention for 30-minute debates. And I think we're trying to bring this swiftly to a close before the end in order to allow the proposer to reach Scottish questions. Order, order. Graham Ledbetter to move the motion.
Thank you, Mr Stewart. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship today. I'm pleased to have secured this debate on a systemic regulatory failure that is quietly draining the bank accounts of residents across Scotland and the wider UK. Mr Chairman, we are in the midst of a cost of living crisis, yet large numbers of domestic residents are being charged inflated business electricity tariffs for the essential communal services that keep their buildings safe and functional. In a nutshell, the issue is this. In many residential developments, services such as stairwell lighting, fire alarms, lifts and door entry systems are powered via shared electricity meters. Despite this electricity being used entirely for domestic living, residents are routinely charged business energy rates. This is not a niche issue, it is a systemic failure driven by outdated rules and weak enforcement. The financial harms to our constituents is stark. A typical communal supply using around 1,000 kilowatt hours per year would cost roughly £380 on a fixed domestic tariff. Under frequently used standard variable business tariffs, that same usage can rise to around £1,465, an excess cost of approximately £1,100 per metre every single year. Across a modest development of 75 flats, this can add around £12,000 annually to residents' collective bills. What makes this particularly galling is that many residents are entirely unaware of how their communal electricity is billed. They may not know whether it is on a separate meter, how many accounts are involved, or whether it is charged at domestic or business rates. These costs are simply absorbed into factoring charges, leaving consumers unaware of both the issue and their rights, unaware when they are being roundly fleeced for either someone else's failure to act properly or to correctly inform them. The root cause of this is simple. It is a regulatory mismatch. The problem sits at this intersection of off-gem regulation, supplier interpretation and third-party management structures. Yep.
Mr Chairman, can I commend the Honourable Gentleman very much for Can I commend the honourable gentleman very much for bringing forward this debate? And the honourable gentleman and I spoke beforehand, but he may be aware that consumers with factory arrangements in Northern Ireland are historically vulnerably too high on regulated prices, similar to those in GB, and that the Northern Ireland Assembly has moved to correct this vulnerability. Does the honourable member not agree that UK-wide those in communal schemes must also have protection from gouging and ability to access better price energy? Thank you.
Absolutely, I thank the honourable member for his intervention, and that is absolutely the case. In Scotland, as an example, you can have a route to addressing complaints about this through the regulation of factors, but it's complex, cumbersome, and there should be a simpler way to do it through the energy regulator, and I will touch on that later on in my speech. So many communal meters are correctly classed as Profile Class 01, a domestic designation based on usage. However, where a property factor, managing agent or company holds the contract, suppliers are often automatically applied a business tariff.
On that point, will you give way?
Yep.
I thank the honourable member for giving way and for securing this debate. Business owner Gary Hellier from Yeovil signed an energy contract through a broker who convinced him that energy prices were going to rise to 35p per kilowatt and that the 15p kilowatt was a great deal. Energy prices have fallen below that, but Gary has been stuck in this contract and is facing bills around £390,000. Does the honourable member agree that we need greater oversight of energy brokers so that local businesses are not pushed into ripped-off contracts?
Yeah, I would certainly agree on that. It's not entirely the purpose of my debate today, but it is an issue that I recognise, and I think there has to be a route for people to challenge the advice that they're given and to be able to take incorrect advice, people who have given incorrect advice to task, and for that to be reasonably simple. Currently it isn't in many cases. Ofgem's own guidance on domestic communal supplies says that suppliers their guidance that suppliers ought to follow is very clear. The non-commercial collective purchase of energy for mainly domestic use should be treated as a domestic supply, provided the arrangement is not commercial in nature. That guidance makes clear that classification should be based on how the energy is used, not on the legal entity holding the contract. Yet in practice it is inconsistently applied and weakly enforced. Turning now to the issue of this inconsistent supplier behaviour. This has created a staggering inconsistency across the energy markets. Some suppliers, including Ecotricity, Octopus and OVO, correctly apply domestic rates based on usage and do not override domestic classifications simply because a factor is involved. Others, however, including EDF, British Gas, E.ON and SSE, often default to business rates based solely on the identity of the contract holder. Indeed, in research carried out by my office, EDF has explicitly stated that they, and I quote, override the domestic classification if the usage is for a communal area managed by a business entity. That is in clear contradiction to Ofgem's advice. The result is a supplier lottery. Two identical buildings on the same street can pay vastly different amounts for the same stairwell lighting, purely because of which supplier the managing agent selected. The lack of regulatory oversight is deeply frustrating for our constituents. Despite a 2023 call for evidence and multiple parliamentary questions, no meaningful reform has followed. The current government has carried out some further consultation, but has not yet moved forward in things either. And when I come to my conclusion, I'll have specific asks for the Minister in that regard. In April 2024, the Minister's Department suggested that due to physical setups, these consumers would continue to receive energy via non-domestic contracts. I've additionally met with Ofgem on this issue. They recognise the problem, but consistent standards have not been enforced. Residents who do not choose their supplier are excluded from key domestic protections, including price cap coverage and energy ombudsman access. They are effectively trapped. More worryingly, when debts arise, suppliers may pursue residents directly as the end users, despite residents having no control over the contract, a catch-22 where responsibility exists without authority, leaving them unable to discuss the debts that they are being chased for because they don't hold the contract. If residents wish to complain, they often find the Ombudsman route is unavailable to them because the contract is held by a third party, leaving courts or tribunals as the only effective route for redress. Mr Chairman, I therefore have 6 targeted and practical policy asks of the Minister. Number 1 is reform of the standard licence condition 6 to prioritise actual usage over contract structure. Number 2 is mandate a standardised appeal process for tariff classification across suppliers. 3, enforce profile class integrity so domestic PCO1 meters are not billed at business rates. 4, strengthen Ofgem's enforcement powers so protections are enforceable and not just advisory. 5, reopen the DESNES call for evidence and commit to legislative change. And 6, ensure that residents under third-party communal contracts can access the Energy Ombudsman. In conclusion, Mr Chairman, the current system is a failure of logic and protection and a further cost of living blow to people who can least afford it. We are effectively telling residents that because they live in a flat with a shared hallway rather than a semi-detached house, they must pay business prices for their light bulbs and fire alarms. To put it simply, the current situation is like being charged a commercial freight rate for a first-class stamp simply because the person posting the letter for you happens to be a professional administrator. It is time the Government and Ofgem ensured that domestic use always equals a domestic price and that residents are fully aware of their rights when communal energy arrangements are in place. Thank you.
The question is that this House has considered energy pricing for consumers with factored energy arrangements. And I now call the Minister.
Thank you, Mr Stewart. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, and I'd like to congratulate the member for Murray West, Nairn and Strathspey for securing this debate this morning and giving members across the House a rare opportunity to discuss factoring arrangements in Scotland, but I'm sure one that's very welcome. The Government recognises that households in factored buildings and their equivalents face more complexity in securing the energy they need than typical households. And in the course of this speech, I hope to address the 6 points that he made at the end of his speech, but if there's any that he would like to discuss with me further, I would be more than happy to do that as well after the debate. Factors and other property managers have an important role to play in ensuring that they secure the best value energy contract for their building. And when looking to renew their energy contracts, they should be actively comparing quotes from across the non-domestic market and considering available customer service data, for example, like Citizens Advice's Energy Supplier Performance League table. Small tenements will have different needs for communal area pricing than, for example, a large council complex. And while the existing approach has generally benefited households and offered protection from unfair reselling, we've heard from the Honourable Member in this debate and from others that some households can be exposed to high prices. And the Government's committed to ensuring that our approach to these issues is one which delivers the best outcomes for our citizens as our energy system evolves. Turning briefly to... Of course.
Thank the Minister for taking my intervention. And can I welcome the debate and congratulate the member from Moray West, Nairn and Strathspey for securing it. I'm grateful that the Minister took time to visit my constituency recently and meet with residents who have been battling with their factors, who manage a heat network but are all too often left without heat and out hot water, which happened again over this Christmas period. My constituents were very grateful to hear at the pace that the Minister is working and putting these regulations in place and projects that will protect residents like them. But does he agree with me that there is a need to see action from the Scottish Government to readdress the balance of power between factors, companies and residents?
Thank you, Mr Stewart. I thank the member for her intervention and also for all the work that she's been doing to advocate on behalf of our constituents in, I think it was Saltire Square in Granton, and also the member for Edinburgh East and Musselburgh who's doing the same thing regarding a heat network in Green Dykes. And I think we heard at that meeting that we had how important it was that we get on top of this, and the Ofgem regulation obviously kicks in the 27th of January, and we'll be looking to Ofgem to implement that as quickly as possible. But I agree with her, and I'll turn to that in my speech in a moment, but more actions that other governments across the UK can also be taking in this space. The Government's committed to ensuring that our approach to these issues is one which delivers the best outcomes for our citizens as our energy system evolves, and Ofgem keeps all the standard licence conditions under review to make sure that they are working in the best interests of consumers. And as part of this, they will look again at standard licence condition 6 to ensure that the definitions continue to meet the needs of consumers and the evolving energy market. Now, before I turn in detail to the other energy policy issues, let me say something briefly about factoring as a whole. It's obviously a devolved responsibility, and it's for the Scottish Government to make decisions relating to this. However, there's widespread interest in factoring reform in Scotland, and there's clearly an interaction between the effectiveness of the factor and their ability to provide the best deal in energy and many other areas for the consumer. And there's clearly a need and widespread calls for factoring reform in Scotland. There have been no major reforms to factoring since 2011, when my honourable friend, the member for Glasgow West, in her time as a member of the Scottish Parliament, took a member's bill through Holyrood. And there have been amendments to housing legislation recently, which have been rejected by the Scottish Government, to increase transparency in their charging and to make it far easier for homeowners to take action against factors. And I believe that further work in this area would be welcomed by many across this chamber, by tenants and by homeowners in Scotland. Turning now to the issues of energy policy. For consumers, without direct control, as we've heard from the member, over their energy supply, access to the Energy Ombudsman depends on the specific arrangements between themselves and the intermediary contracting with the supplier. If the residents do not have control over the party that contracts with the supplier, allowing them access to the Ombudsman fundamentally changes the role and purpose of the Energy Ombudsman as a service between the supplier and the contracted customer. Ofgem are always happy to clarify where consumers are currently able to access the Ombudsman to make sure customers are not missing out on any avenues of redress they are entitled to. But I am happy to take away from this debate this issue and raise this issue that the honourable gentleman has raised with regards to the Energy Ombudsman next time I meet the Energy Ombudsman in person. Meter profile classes, which he also raised, are the responsibility of Alexon, and Ofgem have previously clarified that for communal supply arrangements, profile classes should not be the final determining factor in the supply type offered by suppliers. If further clarification is needed in this area, that is something that can be explored by Ofgem and Alexon, and I would encourage the honourable member to maybe write to both Ofgem and Alexon on that point. We're aware that where households do not have direct control over all aspects of the supply, it can create difficulties for them. Where households do not have direct control over their individual supply arrangements, Ofgem's maximum resale price rules protect households from being overcharged by limiting the price of energy charged to consumers to the price paid by those procuring the energy. In other words, the principle being that profit should not be made when reselling energy in these kind of arrangements. And the government is very, very clear that resellers, such as factors or landlords, should not profit from the resale of energy. The maximum resale price is set at cost pass-through, meaning the maximum price at which energy can be resold is the same as the price that the reseller paid. Many who are resold energy have limited choice in who supplies them. The maximum resale price is important as it's the main protection against resellers exploiting their position. The energy system has evolved significantly since the last substantive review of maximum resale price, and the transition to an increasingly decentralised, digitalised and decarbonised system driven by net zero ambitions and technological innovation has seen new challenges and opportunities emerge. Ofgem have begun a review into the maximum resale price to determine whether it delivers fair, transparent pricing and adequate consumer protection, and whether it enables investment in low-carbon infrastructure and services necessary to deliver net zero at lowest cost. And Ofgem have identified that enforcement mechanisms for the current maximum resale price rules are failing to protect some consumers. And this is a key area of Ofgem's current review, and decisions on any further action that may be needed will be made based on these findings. The review started with a call for input in autumn 2025 to gather evidence, and Ofgem aimed to publish a policy consultation in summer 2026. The MRP has an important role across the energy industry, as well as improving the situation for households. Changes to the MRP have the potential to positively impact other areas of the energy industry. And I'd just like to briefly touch on the point that the member for Yeovil and South Somerset raised regarding his constituent. He may already know that we have announced regulation of third-party intermediaries, and that will be legislation that we will take forward through upcoming legislation. And this is an important point to give people more power where they are in these brokered energy deals. Ultimately, households and factored properties feel their energy costs for communal areas and otherwise are too high because they are fundamentally too high. As members will know, international gas prices are still 40% higher than they were in 2021. Permanently reducing energy prices can only be achieved by moving to homegrown, clean power that we control, and that's why my department's central mission is to deliver a clean power system by 2030 through renewables and through new nuclear power. And this is a way to break our dependence on global fossil fuel markets and protect bill payers permanently from higher prices. The government's determined to deliver on this mission, and my department is leading an ambitious programme of work that will make it happen. For example, the creation of GB Energy will help us to harness clean energy. Contracts for difference will continue to drive clean power investment, as we've seen today from the announcement of AR7 and the results of AR7. Improvements to the capacity market will ensure security of supply while maximising bill payer value for money, and network improvements with significant investment from network providers finally being made after years of underinvestment will reduce the costs of operating the energy system for decades to come. And across all fronts, the government is taking action to drive down energy bills, and many households and factored properties will also benefit from the announcements that the Chancellor made in the autumn budget. The budget announced government action to take an average of £150 off the cost of domestic energy bills through closing the ECO scheme and providing exchequer funding to reduce the cost of the renewables obligation for domestic energy suppliers from the 1st of April. These measures are designed to provide immediate relief for people across the country and set the foundation for sustained long-term reductions in energy bills through a transition to clean, homegrown power. And that support, as many honourable members will know, comes on top of the £150 off of energy bills provided by the government for around 6 million families, extended, almost doubled this year, under the Warm Home Discount this winter, which is cutting fuel poverty right now for those consumers who are in receipt of it. In addition to our work reducing energy prices, the government is delivering record investment in upgrading our housing stock through the Warm Homes Plan. We've committed to £15 billion to make the biggest ever public investment in home upgrades, upgrading up to 5 million homes by accelerating the installation of heat pumps, solar panels, batteries and insulation. And this will come when this is announced, with Barnett consequentials for the devolved governments, including the Scottish Government, to develop their own schemes under this funding. And this, alongside our action to make electricity cheaper and more flexible, is how we're delivering warmer, more affordable homes and repairing a broken energy system. I'd like to thank honourable members again for being present at this debate today and for raising these issues and for all their contributions on this. And I'd like to assure them that they will be taken into consideration by the government and by Ofgem as we move forward. Thank you.
The question is that this House has considered energy pricing for consumers with factored energy arrangements. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. Order, order. The sitting is suspended until 2:30 p.m.